right, Billy, welcome to the Uncharted Podcast.
Thanks, Christian. Good to be here.
It is good that you're here, considering you were a little sick this morning, huh?
Yeah, it happens every once in 5 years. You eat the wrong thing, make a bad decision, and pay for it a little bit. But,
what was it this time?
This was some old, probably undercooked sausage.
Like elk sausage or...
I wish. I think it was just very generic, something had been in the bottom of the freezer.
I think you said your wife warned you.
She did. Yep, she did. She got to have the last laugh, throw the rest of it out this morning.
Oh, man. I'm glad you're feeling better. So I was thinking about on the way over here how we met and just how life is so serendipitous all the time. Like now we're living in the same town and we go snowmobiling and boating and I chase you on a mountain bike, or you wait for me rather. But I thought it'd be fun to start a little bit how we know each other and then back up a little bit to your beginnings. But I think the first time I actually met you, although I processed a bunch of papers for you a few months before, was in Baghdad.
This is true.
As randomly, that's how I meet a lot of people.
Actually, I think it was in the same palace that Dan was at. What's the famous Saddam interview from?
Dan Rather's. Yeah, it was the JVB at Camp Victory, yeah. And because there's Liberty and Victory, I always get those confused. But the JVB was a hotel built by Saddam for his daughter's wedding.
Nice.
And then that turned into kind of where visitors to the base during the war would stay. They called them DVs, distinguished visitors. Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes we were in there, sometimes we weren't. Sometimes we were distinguished, but...
Yeah, no, it's crazy to think back on that because obviously as an athlete, you don't really have the opportunity to interact with the service people and get to go to places like that. But we got a really unique opportunity after winning the Olympics in Vancouver to go on kind of a
handshake tour.
And
so you guys, like, you take your medals over, you put them on people. Do you ever worry about it? I mean, I feel like that'd be very precious at that point.
I guess that's a good question. What's funny about Olympic medals in general is that, at least to me, and I think my teammates, is the medal itself is, it's nice to share with people.
Yeah.
But like if I lost it, I don't think I'd lose a night's sleep over it. It's it reminds me of the journey, but really the result was, it was something I shared with some of my best friends and teammates. We worked really hard for a long time, and the medal's it's just a thing. It just sits on a shelf. So, I actually break it out when asked, to take to things like that or school visits or whatever. And, I'll hand that thing out to a group of kids and just watch it disappear and not worry about it at all.
Yeah, I have a picture of one where I'm like, I've got it on my neck. I think it's Johnny's. And I'm drinking chocolate milk out of one of those boxes. And he's got the thumbs up next to me. But I was a person that grew up on a farm in Wisconsin. And the Olympics was this imaginary thing. It may as well be Jurassic Park. Yep. It looked so cool. I wanted to go there, but there was no path from where I was there. So for me, it's and now it's funny. I have all these friends who are Olympians and people like you, and that was always the coolest thing to me. Is to go to the Olympics and get to wear the American flag and play sports. So it's crazy that it's such a kind of casual thing for you, because for me, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was a career. I went to 5 games, started when I was in high school, and for sure the first one, was...
You went to the Olympics in high school?
Yep, 98. I was a senior.
At Steamboat?
No, I was actually still living in upstate New York.
Oh, okay.
Near Lake Placid in a town called Saranac Lake. And, I actually ended up going to a private sports academy for the year as a day student, just so I could miss enough school, knowing that there was a chance I might go. Oh. And I think I went to 40 or 50 days of school my senior year.
What's it like being a high schooler and going to the Olympics?
Well, so, I mean, for sure that was eyes wide open, going over. It was all, that one was really all about the experience and getting the jacket and, representing the country and just taking it all in and,
Were you old enough to appreciate it at that point, or do you, looking back, still feel wow, I had no idea?
Actually, absolutely. And I think it was a really good opportunity for me to get one out of the way where I wasn't a serious contender. I did compete well. I think I was an 8th after the first jump on the normal hill. And, but it was, I didn't have a lot of pressure, from the media or from anybody else. So then, you kind of get that one out of your system. And then in Salt Lake was the opposite. We were basically tasked with winning medals in Salt Lake. It had never been done before by an American.
So you know what the Russians felt like?
Right. Yeah. So it was like, we came in here to win, and we went 180 degrees the opposite direction. Instead of like having fun and taking it in, we literally locked ourselves in a house right here in Park City, where we had a private chef, we had a nutritionist and a sports psychologist and a massage therapist. We had everything that you would think you'd want.
Yeah.
And we were totally miserable the whole time.
And how did your results end up?
They were subpar.
Really?
I won the last World Cup going into the games in 2002, which was a little bit fluky. It was my first podium. But I think my best result was 14th at the games. We got 4th in the team event.
So is there a big change, like your normal routine and then going into the Olympics, all of a sudden it's kind of a different setup, and that was probably part of the reason it was subpar?
Yeah, absolutely. We isolated ourselves. We didn't go to any ceremonies. We didn't go out with any other athletes from other nations or other athletes from the U.S. and enjoy the Olympics. We literally were so hyper-focused, and then it made like defeat that much more crushing, obviously. And then if you fast forward to 2010, we were exactly the opposite. Again, we were relaxed, but then we were really contenders too. Like now we had a history of results.
You had like old man swagger at that point, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, like literally people will laugh when they find this out, but we traveled with our normal group. We stayed at the village, and we noticed about a year out that we had an 8-day break in the schedule. And so we flew up and we raced the day after opening ceremonies. And we already had a plan. Some generous individual had offered to fly us on their private jet back to Park City. So within 24 hours of the first race, I was backcountry skiing over on Mount Air and
No
Carlos.
way.
And what was really funny about it was, we owned that plan, right? And we were 2nd, 4th, and 6th in the first race. We got the first medal out of the way. Mm-hmm. We had solid results. Everybody knew we were the strongest team. And then we disappeared, and I posted a video, back when GoPros were new, of backcountry skiing the next day, and tagged like all the Norwegians and German athletes in it. And it freaked the Norwegians out so bad that they like at the last minute were like, "Oh my God, the U.S. left. Do we need to leave?" And they like went and booked a house down on Vancouver Island and sat in the rain, like because they felt like, "Oh, okay, we need to do that too." And they ended up not winning a medal for probably the first time ever in Nordic combined that year. So
can you get in trouble for leaving?
No.
I mean, my first thought is like, why would you leave? But maybe if you've done it 5 times. I mean, made it to the Olympics, like, soak it up.
Yeah, honestly, when you're there for the 4th time, it's like we were there to medal. We were there to have fun, but we knew we could easily get really stale if we just sat up there.
Sure.
I mean, there's nothing to do. Like, you're not really training anymore. You're just trying to, like, stay sharp.
Right.
And so for where we were at, that was the perfect plan. We flew back up and got 3 more medals.
It's amazing with all the science and coaching that there's this human element that you just got to be loose. Like I think about that Nike Breaking 2 project they did for years, and they just ran it last year at some point. Mm-hmm. And what the one guy was like 2 hours and 38 seconds or something. But as I watched that, it's like they thought of everything except there was no crowd.
Right. And
I'm like, man, if you've got 10,000 people cheering you on, it's got to be good for 38 seconds over a marathon. Mm-hmm. And I always wonder how they missed that one. It's like, and maybe like with you guys, you got 2 specific that time with like massage at 1, getting this carb, fat, protein balance in at 1:30, or whatever it is.
And it wasn't even that. Like, by Vancouver, I remember eating McDonald's a couple times. And because at that point, when you need to be serious, when you don't. And honestly, like we approached those games with everything to gain and nothing to lose. Like we knew we could win a bunch of medals if it went well, and we also knew it's an outdoor sport. We know we failed before. The difference this time is if we fail, we're not going to be miserable about it.
Well, what's interesting is what you just said. It's like you knew yourself. Mm-hmm. This isn't cavalier. You've been doing this your whole life. So you weren't setting yourself up to fail. You just started to go, well, this doesn't really make a difference. I'm actually better if I'm loose.
Yeah.
I'm going to go backcountry skiing.
And I'll tell you, like, of all the great champions that I've had the pleasure to know, the very best ones are all N of 1s. They're all different. Mm-hmm. Some of them need to be serious about their food, and that's what makes them tick. And some of them need to be on a schedule where they nap every day at 1 o'clock and then they go train again. And some of them, like me, I'm very instinctual. I'm instinctual about my approach to business. I'm instinctual about my approach to even investing. Like I'll literally open the journal, I'll read a headline, and it might make me do the exact opposite thing.
Right,
But I'll buy and sell on something that I just feel. And that's definitely a lot of how I approached my career as an athlete. Now, I'll qualify that and say there was certainly a lot of calculation and trial and error that helped me develop a routine. And one of the biggest things that I learned in my career, if and when possible, is you need to distinguish between routine and ritual. Because routines are what get you to the podium, and rituals are what can get in the way. And I remember a conversation I had with a former Olympic silver medalist who he medaled young, and he was from Norway, and he went into coaching, and he was like trying to tell me that ritual and routine were the same. And I said, well, give me an example of a ritual. And he said, well, I always put my right ski on first. And I said, well, what the fuck happens when you put your left ski on first at the Olympics? Because you will do it there.
Yeah.
That will
so
be
you're thinking about everything else, right?
Then you screwed yourself because you put the wrong ski on first. Why? Who cares?
It's superstition.
So like routines, what I look at, have to be repeatable, portable, and you have a known outcome. So what does that mean? It means like, okay, let's just take a warm up. Everybody warms up a little bit for their athletics, right? I'm not going to say I need to run for 15 minutes. I'm not going to even say I need to run. What if there's no place to run? I'm not going to say I need to ski. What if the course is closed for another race? So I need to do light cardio for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes till I feel good. And then I need to do these stretches because I know that these are the things that these can be done anywhere with anything, whether I have a spin bike, no spin bike, a place to run, not a place to run.
That's great.
And, I developed a series of things that helped keep me on track, and then I let instinct take over.
It's so true, though. I mean, I've seen both sides of these super elites where people are just like robots and machines, and the other guys, it's like, and I don't know if this is even a good example or not, but I think of a guy you ride bikes with once in a while, Peter Sagan, who comes out here, right? And every time you see that dude, he looks like he's just riding he's like a kid on a bike.
He's just playing.
Right?
Yep.
But he is unstoppable.
Yep.
I mean,
if you watch his world championship race,
he's messing with people. He's just having fun.
Yeah, I mean, he's up against teams of 8 from Belgium and from the U.S.
We're staring at their power meters.
And he's got his brother, and that's it. And he's got one bullet to shoot in a race like that. And you don't see him the whole race. You wonder if he's still in it. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden he comes flying out at exactly the right moment.
It's
Nothing
incredible.
but instinct can possibly, wield a bike like that.
Right.
There's no way to plan for that. You can't plan for the breakaway that's not coming back or the one that you maybe should go in. He's definitely playing at the highest level.
It's so true. It's just like an athletic genius that people have or don't have, right? It's instinctual, like you said. Oh man. So to back up, a question I've always had is, how does a person even get into Nordic Combine? I mean, I've been in towns where I see ski jumps, and my first thought is like, who goes off that? And like, at what age did they start? And I know like hockey or baseball, they have like signups at the school, right? But where I'm from, they don't have like ski jump signups. Like maybe they did where you were from. I mean, how did you start?
It's kind of wild because there isn't a super well developed system overall for let's just take the United States, for instance. Right now we have 30 clubs from Alaska to New Hampshire that are operating some program. And it varies a lot. The better ones tend to be more institutional, like a hockey or a soccer program where there is community outreach, recruitment, sign up, then structured programming. But some of our very best jumpers in the last 50, 60 years have come from clubs like you're familiar with back in Minneapolis, where they're just starting to have a real program. So it's oftentimes it's been like whoever's used to jump brings their kids out to the hill, they bring their kids' friends, and then that becomes the program. And it can be as structured as we jump on Wednesday night, or it can be unstructured as I feel like going and packing the hill out. As I work now to develop that sport, I'd like to see it become more structured and institutionalized. But to get back to your question, like generally speaking, what we've discovered in the United States is that getting kids to jump on alpine skis first by the age of 6, 7, or 8 seems to be the perfect time, because there's such an incredible amount of technique that goes into a ski jump. As short as it is, and realistically everybody's seen it, you're basically going from a crouch to a flying position. but you have like somewhere between a tenth and a quarter of a second to make that work. And
so it's just hyper explosive one movement,
and it's a very unnatural movement. Like it basically feels like you're chucking your ass over your head at 60 miles an hour.
Wait, so
on a cliff.
So why alpine skis? Just because they're easy to control and get that pop as a little kid?
They're easier to control. Nordic skis tend to be a little bit more. They don't have any edges on the big jump skis. You know, the bindings are less stable.
And that's why people wipe out at the bottom.
Right. And so, you know, we try to progress them. Like this year, I observed a lot of the 6-year-olds who start on alpine skis move on to jump skis at 7.
And what are they jumping off? Just a snow ramp on nothing, or
pretty small? I mean, it's still enough that even yourself, as an experienced alpine skier, would think twice before you let go of the gate.
I definitely would think twice.
And that's why we've discovered that 6, 7, and 8 seems to be the magic time, because by the time they get to 9, 10, they start to develop fear.
Interesting.
And so, you know, there seems to be a real good window right around 6, 7, 8 where kids are fearless and they'll try it. And once they've tried it and they understand that, hey, this is actually really fun and it's really safe and I get a big rush out of it, then they're addicted. And I would say, like, back of the envelope, 70% of the 6, 7, 8-year-olds who try it fall in love with it.
Wow.
Even though it's very repetitive compared to like a lot of the new school extreme sports, like the original extreme sport of ski jumping, definitely is very addictive, especially to those kids that just love that thrill of coming off the end. And, you know, like just for instance, my 7-year-old Liam last year, he was on jumping skis. He made his way up to the 20 meter. So he's already flown 45, 50 feet, right? And that's crazy, you know?
Why was he scared on the tube the other day?
I don't know.
Doing that.
And, you know,
that's
he's
crazy.
Never crashed ski jumping.
Oh, wow.
So
he's landed everyone.
He's landed everyone.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So is it more structured in other countries, like the Norways, where they're always perennial favorites?
It is.
Is it just more part of the culture? It's kind of like Little League over there, or what's the difference?
There's a little bit of that. You get, and there's definitely a lot of organized sport development, especially in Norway, Germany, and Slovenia. And then Austria, actually, interestingly, doesn't start kids under 10. They tend to recruit out of Alpine and Nordic at like 11 and 12, which is really bizarre to me because we've never been successful with that.
Interesting. But it works for them.
It does work for Austria and Austria only.
So who drug you into this first time?
So I grew up in a little town just outside of Saranac Lake called Vermontville, New York. And I always got to throw that out there because nobody's ever heard of it and they love hearing it.
It sounds made up.
It does. It's on the backside of Whiteface Mountain.
Okay.
And I actually started as a cross-country skier. I think I started racing when I was 5. And there was a big group of us. And always with sport programs, it's always about the kind of the champion, right? And so at the time we had a really good group of parents that organized this little club, and they were passionate about getting their kids out and having this race program. And then they were able to recruit a college skier who had grown up in Saranac Lake to come back and coach when he finished up. And he's like the Pied Piper of skiing, a gentleman named Chris Seymour. And Chris got us all super excited. He was a technician. He was able to teach us how to cross-country ski. And about the time I was 8 or 9, I think I was 8, there was also a counterpart of his named Larry Stone, who was coaching at the jumps. And Larry had been a World Cup coach. He was back coaching the club. And he came over with a video to our cross-country practice. And the video had, you know, good old school, you know, rock and roll and some Van Halen, some AC/DC, and some videos of kids jumping like our age,
right,
all the way up to people ski flying. And, you know, basically he was like, all right, who wants to learn to fly? And, you know, my whole group was like, oh yeah, we got to do this. And then we found out that, you know, Nordic Combine, which combines jumping and cross country, it's an original Olympic discipline, and kind of it's pretty accepted across the world that it's the best way to start the best way to start in Nordic Combine or ski jumper is actually Nordic Combine, because you develop a little bit broader skill set.
Sure.
And so I fell in love with it. And I remember even at an early age thinking like I would never want to do just jumping. I would never want to do just cross country. And even though, believe it or not, I really, really sucked at jumping, like really terrible. I can't even make this up. I mean, I had a coach tell me that I was the reason he smoked at one point. You think of ski jumpers.
How old were you when he told you that?
Like 14 or 15.
Oh, man.
And you think of ski jumpers as, laying out over their skis, sailing down the hill. I can tell you that until I was 16, I never once had my skis underneath me. They were always in front of me. Just like an air plow. And I couldn't. I was athletic, but I couldn't commit to making that unnatural movement. Mm-hmm. And finally, when I was 16, I made a decision that this was worth getting hurt for. I wanted it bad. And so I laid in bed at night in a flying position, and I just thought about it, and I just said I'm gonna do it. And
did you ever have a really bad wreck?
I have had one, and that was a number of years into my professional career, actually. I don't even remember what happened. I just know I flipped over and woke up 10 minutes later with a chopper coming in Slovakia, of all places.
From jumping?
Yeah. I actually used to have scars on my face, and I don't have them anymore because I got all the skin peeled off my face when I slid down the landing hill for
no way
300 meters, on ice. Yep, I literally did. It was like a chemical peel. Everything came off.
Holy cow.
But that's it. That's the only bad accident I ever had ski jumping.
Were you timid after that, or was it just like
nope.
You didn't remember so you could do it again?
No, I won a World Cup like a month later.
No way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've had a pretty awesome career. How many medals? Can you give me the count? Just make sure we got it right.
2 Olympic medals and 4 World Championship medals.
And as an American, that's the best?
I think so. I have more victories than anybody else. Todd Lodwick has more podiums,
mm-hmm.
and Johnny was the first to win World Championships and the first to win an Olympic medal.
And you guys were all on the same team, so it was pretty stacked at that point.
It was stacked, and I think what allowed us all to get good and actually to do what was once thought to be impossible, which was to win medals in Nordic sports. We were able to draft off each other. We basically demanded people buy into a culture where we allowed each other to step up together, to climb together on each other's results. So like, even though Johnny was the first to win world championships mm-hmm. in 2003, and it's not like anybody said, "Oh, I'm a world champion," but he let us share that. Like, we basically got to go to training selflessly with him. Before that, after that, we knew that we'd beaten him as many times as he'd beaten us, and it allowed us to then make that mental jump to say, okay, if he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, what do they say? Iron sharpens iron, right?
Exactly.
So just try to beat the best person in the room. And
yep. So we took turns, and it allowed people to come back from injury and jump right back in,
mm-hmm.
Because there was a team dynamic where we had accountability to each
other. So there wasn't one like sacred cow where it's like, this is our guy and he gets all the best of everything. It's just...
Yep. And any time that started to pop up, we would squash it. And, we basically, no matter how good or bad you were, if you were on the team, you showed up at 8:30 in the morning to jump in the van with everybody else every day.
Right. Wow. So... Vancouver was the most successful Olympics you had, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, so to date, no Americans have ever won medals in Nordic Combined until 2010 and have not since
mm-hmm.
in the Olympics.
And that was the girls, right, this year?
The girls won in cross-country.
Cross-country, yep. That's right. Sorry. So I was looking online, and
that was the first women's cross-country medal ever. And the first Olympic gold medal in cross-country skiing, and actually only the second medal ever for American cross-country.
Wow. So do you think that the program's getting better, or do you think it was just a rare person, or?
I think that the cross-country program, especially on the women's side, mm-hmm. also developed a team culture under Keegan Randall. In 2002, Keegan was solo. There was a couple of women that were 10, 15 years older than her. They trained by themselves. They came only together to travel for, competitions.
Right.
Keegan was, probably barely 20. And going forward after those games, she was on the road alone. And as she was able to get some young women coming onto the team with her, she started to develop this similar culture where they came together for training camps more, or they lived together, and they became good teammates. And that culture, she shared with them her results, because by 2008 and 9, she was on the World Cup podium frequently. And there wasn't another skier in the top 30 or 50 in the world. but she allowed them to train with her. And once you start to train with Olympic champions, you realize they're just human. They bleed, they have shitty days, yep. And if you eat the same food and wake up at the same time and do the same workouts, you start to see pretty quickly how thin the line is between 50th and first in the world.
Well, when I was living in Minneapolis, one of my really good friends was the strength coach for the Minnesota Wild, which is the NHL team. And in the summer, he'd always have me come in and train with them. Told me later, mostly because I'm a nobody and they don't want to lose to a nobody.
Yeah.
But what they didn't know is I'll break my back trying to compete. And it was amazing being a nobody that's not an athlete, working with these guys that are 6 or 7 years younger. Mm-hmm. I'd be middle of the pack on a lot of the stuff. And so many times I just believed it's there's a talent thing for sure, but the hard work thing makes a lot of ground up if you just dig. And I mean, I know that about you because I've been on snowmobiles with you and we get stuck a lot. And that's a poor dig analogy there, whatever. But when it comes to hard work, I mean, at the end of the day, it's this kind of just attitude of we're going to get out of this or we're going to get through this. And you're not waiting for somebody else to come and dig you out, right?
Yeah.
I've always admired athletes who are just the hardest worker. I mean, it's fun to watch the Peter Sagans, don't get me wrong, but you love the grinders, right?
He's a hard worker too.
But he has both, and that's why he's there.
And you know what? I think as great as it is to be a champion, it's way, way, way more meaningful when you're a good person and a hard worker.
Yeah. Do you think that was your secret there that got you over the edge? So you have this collective of dudes, that are pushing each other. But do you think the difference was just that you guys made each other work harder? I mean, your talent was your talent, and then is there more than that? Or
I can tell you right now that with the exception of one, nobody was a physiological standout. Mm-hmm. Nobody was a slouch. But
were you the
16, 17, no, I was not. I was good. I was good.
What was your VO2 max, the highest you recorded?
I tested 84 once.
I mean, that's off the charts.
But generally speaking, during my career, I tested between 70 and 80 all the time, which is in the club. And that's the thing about Talent ID.
That's a very small club, Billy. I worked in a company that I know VO2 max well. I mean, to give perspective to people, that's less than the top 1%, right? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, nobody can really compete in international endurance sports with less than 70 on the men's side.
Yeah, I'm talking as humans.
Right. So, but once you're above 70, I know of 10 individuals who have tested 90. Of those, only one of them was ever any good. So, your percent chance of being better just on your VO2 is it's literally there's a threshold. Let's just call it 70.
Sure, but VO2 is half your training and half your genetics, really, right?
So VO2 is actually almost all genetic component. It actually comes from your mom's side.
But you can train to improve it.
So what you can train is the percentage of your VO2 that you can sustain. And that's lactate threshold.
Yeah.
So that's when you get into cycling jargon. It's watts per kilo, for an hour.
And if anybody's listening, and what's VO2?
Yeah.
It's
the volume of oxygen that your body can consume per minute per kilogram of body weight.
So it's basically a threshold where you just start hyperventilating and your body can't consume any more oxygen. So as you start breathing faster, as you're working harder, you can maintain. Then you hit a wall where it's that's all the oxygen you can process.
Yep.
And then you can't go any faster. And some people can just, and then you
but
hit a hard
I had a
wall.
coach from Norway who was a really, really strong cross-country skier. Mm-hmm. I never won a World Cup because he couldn't jump very well. But his VO2 was 76, 78. Yeah. So same as me. And I think where I got to in my career, I remember thinking it was incredible when I was 16 and watching him. He was able to sustain about 95% of that forever. Yeah, he was comfortable and talking.
He's an elk.
At 70. You know what I mean? And generally what you see is, there's actually, I would bet a higher number than 1% that are above 70. Yeah. But a lot of them, they're running a 7-minute, measly mile at 70. It's all they can do. And the worst part is they can't even sustain that,
Wow.
for a minute. So then it comes into training and hard work, like you said. And that's where, I say I was very instinctual. And there was a very instinctual process to how we got there, but we utilized a lot of technology, stuff that I don't think most countries have done yet. And I'll throw some generalities out there, but going back to 2007, I had a coach who named Dave Jarrett, who now runs a Athletic Republic down in the county. And Dave was the only American coach we'd ever had who finished up his Olympic career and actually went to school. Usually in ski jumping, it's like, oh, I know how to ski jump. I used to jump. I'll show you how to jump. I know how to cross country ski. And Dave was the first one. He went to CU. He got a degree in exercise phys, and he started learning from all the other sports. And he said, there's got to be a better way to train. Because it used to be like, we got up, we went and jumped, went and had lunch, went for a run, had dinner, went to bed.
Right.
And that's what Norway did. And that's why we did it. And Dave came in and he said, look, what if we break this down into some like macro and micro cycles where instead of trying to get better at both every single day, let's try to get really good at one. Then we'll like put that aside. We'll do enough to maintain our gains and we'll work on the other. But instead of jumping tired or cross country skiing tired or not doing as much volume as like the specialist cross-country skiers do, which we know will make us faster if we do more volume, let's figure out a way to train smarter. And so we started to do a lot of phases, meso cycles, and then as we started to do that and we started to see success, we started cutting things out of our training. We also started to look at look at cycling, these sustainable workloads. This is the bread and butter of how these guys are getting to the peak.
Yeah.
Okay, how can we do that in cross country? We don't have force meters. The snow, the coefficient of friction changes every day in the snow. Some days it's sloppy, some days it's icy. So how can we measure it? And what we were noticing is that we thought, but we couldn't be sure, everybody was training by heart rate. And heart rate kind of can be junky. Some people, their heart rate will match workload pretty closely, and some people they have to work out for a while for their heart rate to rise.
Right.
And so if you're racing out of the gate for let's say an interval session, you're racing to get your heart rate up. Well, now you're going hard, but now you have to back off. But you might not be aware of it because you're on this unknown friction surface. And so we decided, let's do it on the treadmill. So we started actually roller skiing on a giant treadmill.
I've seen that treadmill. Brian was telling me about that. It's humongous.
It's humongous. Yeah,
it's very expensive.
3 cyclists abreast on it easily. They're about 85, 90 grand. I've been looking at one. I want one for my garage.
For your house? Yeah, why not?
And a lot of people use the treadmills just for testing, just VO2 max. And we started to use it for training. And what it allowed us to do is to see actually
it removes variables.
It removes all these variables.
Yeah.
And when I start my interval and finish it at the same workload, it actually feels a lot different. It feels a lot easier in the beginning than you think, but then you're not slowing down, so it's still hard at the end. And so we were able to then make bite-sized incremental changes in our work to elevate our threshold even higher.
Cool.
And I remember doing that, getting up to upwards of 12 times 4 minute repetitions, which is a god-awfully long workout to do at that intensity.
Right.
And we started adding oxygen. So we were breathing in extra oxygen because we're here in Park City. It's at 2,000 meters. We wanted to sharpen the sword, but we didn't want to have to fly down to sea level all the time to do it. So we started adding oxygen, and it got to the point where we got so efficient at some of these workloads that nobody could stay with you.
Wow. It's amazing.
But now we're talking about just these little incremental changes. Right. And I want to just circle back on one thing because I think people will find it interesting. Yeah. We talked briefly about the difference between 50th and first is so slim. It's you take those people into the
it can be lab, a second, or less,
and you're not going to find much difference between them. Somebody might be better at one exercise than another, but generally speaking, these athletes are all very, very within 1% of each other.
But then how did that dude that this last Olympics who fell at the beginning and broke his pole, how does he win?
So that's what I was going to say. So let's go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
I would say on the day that I won, there was probably between 15 and 20 guys in the field that could have won that day. And, you literally start taking them out through the course of the day based on their mental game. Like, who didn't sleep well the night before? They're going to take themselves out. Who didn't eat for breakfast what they wanted? You know, who sees the wind blowing on the hill and gets nervous?
Right.
Who's focusing on, you know, details they can't control versus the process, versus following their routine, or who screws up their ritual? And at the end of the day, you literally end up with like 2 or 3 people that separate themselves. And then,
so how did you get that strong of a mind? Like, how did you, like, what is it just a lifetime of doing it? Or
the biggest key for me, you know, through all the experiences we talked about, from Nagano to Salt Lake, was learning to go for it with everything to gain and nothing to lose. And ultimately that means don't give a shit. Like, I was sitting on top of the jump smiling, even though the wind was blowing. We'd restarted the round a couple times. You know, easily could have gotten flipped over and hurt. You're just like, well, this is it. I'm going to do it. And if I'm going to do what I know how to do, I'm going to let my body do it.
And you still have that today. You have a certain level of just send it. I've seen it in a lot of things we do.
Makes you a lot more dangerous, I'll tell you. I mean, dangerous in a good way.
Right.
It could be dangerous for your health, too.
And I say that, too, to a lot of people. I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? People have, like, this unnatural fear all the time. It's like fear was something that's put in the human body because tigers used to be able to grab us and eat us. You know, like, that was something, like, you hear a noise in the dark and you get scared. You get scared because your DNA from caveman era is still going, that might be a tiger that eats me. You know, where we live, it's probably a baby deer just eating some grass out of your lawn.
And I think people literally take that same kind of fight or flight and fear mechanism and they manufacture it into an anxiety mechanism and the things
and reasons not to do things.
Really important.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I do find I have a lot of conversations around fear just because I've, you know, spent a lot of time in dangerous areas and whatnot. And when you really break it down, the world's pretty darn safe. I mean, things can happen, but you don't have to be like fearful all the time of noises or bumps in the night, you know?
Yeah. I mean, to some extent, and I know a lot of people probably struggle with this, but like, when you can just like really embrace all the things that could possibly go wrong.
Right.
And be comfortable with that, then you can focus on success.
Or make a decision off of what actually could happen. Not all the things in your head. But like eliminate all the BS and get down to like...
I mean, I think in sports, like the biggest thing that, you know, I found was like, my mom will always love me. The sun's going to rise. You know?
Right.
Nobody's going to like hurt me for not winning, you know? So why not just go for it?
Right.
If I don't, you know, I've lost a lot more times than I've won for sure.
I mean, you know, when we did Shark Tank, people are like, weren't you scared? And I'm like, it's not real sharks, you know, like I'm going to walk out of there. Nobody's going to shoot at me.
Yeah.
I don't know why people get so scared, just scared. I think that's a skill that just takes practice.
It does.
I think you and I have probably had a lot of experiences where you start scared, then you go, okay, that next time I'm not going to freak out. And you freak out a little and then a little less to the point where a gunshot goes off and you just go, oh, what was that?
Sometimes you have to fail a couple times and get hurt.
Totally.
And realize that you can recover.
Right. Yeah, because hurt is still not the end.
Right.
You heal. I love that, man. So I was looking online. February 25th, 2010 was a big day for you. Mm-hmm. Did I get the right date?
You got the right date.
Should we play multiple choice of what the most important thing on that day was? Or?
The answer I have to give.
So you were, as I read it, you'd won the medal, so it was kind of a party at the house, right?
Yeah.
And the teams have their kind of sponsors come, and it's a celebration. But was it a gold or a silver medal that day? It was gold medal. So you got a gold medal. Pretty big day right there, right? Mm-hmm. And then you got talked into. I shouldn't say got talked into, but the story I read was somebody convinced you.
You want to add the funniest part about that is it's so. So I'll break to the punchline because you just basically said it. I ended up proposing to my now wife, Katie.
And that's 2 of the 3, right?
That is 2 of the 3. Right. So I'll run you through the real quick and dirty. So
yeah, I'd love it.
You get to that point in a relationship where it's almost like inevitable you're going to propose.
Right.
And I don't know, I wanted it to be like kind of a surprise. So
a surprise to you or a surprise to her?
To Katie, because I think she just felt like, oh, he's going to do it one of these days.
And Katie, by the way, was Olympian too.
So she was actually a very good World Cup slider in the sport of skeleton.
Skeleton, right.
But she, like the years that she was second for the U.S., they only qualified one sled.
Oh, gotcha.
Or the years she was third, they only qualified two, So, but yeah, so I got the ring, and it was like a family heirloom. So I had it sitting around for like months. And I was like, it's not the right time. So then finally I was like, all right, I'm going to bring it to the Olympics because at least that'll be a little bit of a surprise. And then I got to the Olympics and I ended up coming back to Park City. I barely saw her the whole time. And I realized like the night before the last race, I basically had forgotten about it because I was nervous about racing,
Right.
I was like, oh man, I got to do this tomorrow because she's leaving to go back to New York like right away. So I end up bringing this thing, this $10,000 family heirloom, diamond ring to the race in my backpack. And I remember handing the backpack to like one of our techs, and I was like, don't lose this. And they looked at me like, what do you care? Like dirty socks and extra gloves or whatever, water bottle, who cares? I'm like, don't lose it. So then I go and race. Like this is like 5 minutes before I start the Olympics, by the way.
And then the media train probably starts, right?
The media train starts as soon as I forget about it again.
Right.
And we go and do the medal ceremony. That's great. And then Johnny Spillane, who's like my best friend in the whole world, he finishes second. I'm first, he's second. It's the greatest thing ever. And we're in the backstage of this USA house, and they're gonna introduce us. And I'm like, dude, he's a no bullshit kind of guy. I'm like, is this too cheesy? Like to propose to Katie like after that? And he's like, wait a second, you have a ring here? I was like, yeah. He's like,
oh, you hadn't told him?
No.
Told anybody?
No. I was like living with this all by myself. So
secret,
yeah. I'm like, this sounds super cheesy. And he's like, dude, you got to do it. So I'm like, all right. So then I'm like fumbling around in my backpack looking for this ring, and the phone rings, which is the number 3 thing, right? And Keegan Randall, who's another one of my favorite people in the whole world, and as I said, it should be credited for the success of the women's cross country team. Keegan calls as an athlete rep. She says, congratulations, you've been chosen to be the flag bearer for closing ceremonies. So here I am, I'm like, oh, cool. And I'm like, wait a second, that's kind of a big deal. But I feel I got a lot going on right now. So I'm psyched, but I'll talk to you later.
I mean, dude, carry the flag in, got a gold medal.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you propose at that point? Just get the hat trick, right?
Yeah, it was pretty funny because when I did, I had the mic in front of a bunch of, it was 100 people, mostly family, friends, coaches, etc., teammates.
I was at that house. I was at Vancouver, so I went up there one night. Yeah. Okay. So I remember that. Yeah, it was cool.
So I literally call Katie up to the stage, and she's kind of I think thinking why? Yeah. And I drop to a knee, and just the look on her face.
Oh my gosh.
It was pretty.
I think that's awesome. Pretty cool, man. Not cheesy at all.
Yeah. It all worked out.
And now 2 kids. 2 kids. Living in Park City.
Living the dream.
So now you're running the Nordic Combined program.
Yeah. So actually, subsequent to Vancouver, resources, as I'm sure everybody is hearing, in the Olympic movement are just totally insufficient for supporting the athletes. And so
how does it compare to, every time the Olympics come around, it's Russia and China and these state-run programs where these secret labs and, it's kind of Bondish almost, like James Bond. But how does the American program compare to your biggest competitors? Is it half the funding, or how would you quantify it?
I don't know exactly what the percent difference in funding is. I think it varies a lot sport to sport.
Right.
You have some sports that are NCAA development programs like swimming, track and field. They have clubs and school programs that feed colleges, and then the NGBs, national governing bodies in this country, basically pluck the best ones out of these programs, so they didn't have to invest in that athlete. And to some degree, a lot of those organizations are able to actually stipend or salary their athletes to help support them. Then you get sports like skiing and snowboarding, where you have all this development that needs to be done to bring them from a club level to, this World Cup level. A lot of it's done overseas in order for them to be in a field strong enough to, learn how to compete at that level. And it's really expensive. And so, the prioritization of resources has really gone toward, building programs, and staff. And ultimately, there's just not enough money left for the travel expenses of all the athletes, and not to mention any type of income, and B, there's not enough to go around for every sport. So after Vancouver, ski jumping actually lost its funding from the Olympic Committee.
Oh, wow.
And so then an organization started by some of the alumni that I looked up to as a kid called the USA Ski Jumping started, and they basically funded a very small national team. And after Sochi Olympics, when Nordic Combined didn't medal, their funding got cut as well. So then I got involved, and we ended up taking Nordic Combined into USA Ski Jumping, and we renamed the organization USA Nordic Sport. And a couple of years after I retired, the executive director left, and the board asked me if I'd come and run it. And so I got involved 2 years ago as the executive director, and immediately went and hit the streets fundraising, and was able to put together a pretty sizable increase in the budget. And we've been able to fully fund the World Cup programs for the last quad, the only discipline in ski and snowboard actually that was able to do that. And we were able to add the women's program, and are now building a women's Nordic Combined program. And this year we added a very large junior national team program, because we know how important it is to build the culture,
right,
and also the athleticism of that key 15 to 19-year-old age group. And so now my big push in building a sustainable organization is to reduce its reliance on me. And so we are really going after some value-based sponsorships. So we're really trying to be active in in calculating our values on traditional and social media, making sure our athletes are well supported so that they also represent our sponsors well, and going out and getting.
What kind of sponsors have you found? Can you name a few of them? Or?
Yeah, so right now we've been really, really proud to add Nike last year.
Wow, that's not a small one.
That is not a small one, and they've been really awesome to work with. When you show up to our team camps, we had one in Minneapolis last week. You've got 40 athletes running around just decked out in Nike gear, looking super pro. We added Mayo Clinic as our high performance and medical provider.
Awesome.
And that's been huge. We went out there last week as well, and we put together some really cool testing, from VO2 max to force plate testing, 3D motion capture, biomechanical analysis. Did everything from blood labs just to make sure the athletes are healthy, to physicals, to vision tests, and then into the high performance side of jumping and running and sprinting and moving, and that's a partnership that we'll be there with them at least 3 to 4 times a year. And we're also looking at building a venue near there in Red Wing, Minnesota.
Okay. So. Wow, amazing, man. So you saved the sport.
Let's see how it comes out. No, it's going great, and the number of kids that are competing and jumping in the United States has doubled in the last 5 years.
So if somebody wanted to get involved, or was like, "This is rad, I want my kid to do this." How do they do that? Is there anything you'd suggest?
They should check out our website, usanordic.org. And we have a list of all the local clubs, like I said, from Alaska to New Hampshire. Not everybody's going to have a jump in their backyard, but some might be surprised. There's actually one in St. Paul, one in Minneapolis, one in Chicago, one in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. There's several that are not so far from major population centers like Boston. So we can help put them in touch with their local club.
Yeah.
And every club has a learn to jump program. Might be winter only. A lot of them have summer now. It's fascinating.
For the moms, it's not that dangerous, right?
It is the second safest snow sport to cross country skiing.
Doesn't seem like it to me, but I'll believe you.
Doesn't seem like it, but I'll tell you what we really focus on globally as a sport is safety.
Right.
So in designing hills, designing equipment.
Because the thing is, you guys are never that far off the ground. You're just flying along it, kind of,
We're
right?
not. And I'll tell you that the coaches are really hard on progressing athletes at an appropriate speed for their development. So we don't throw kids that aren't ready off big Olympic-sized hills, and that really reduces a lot of the
Sure.
danger. And the equipment has become much, much safer over the years.
How long are the skis?
Skis are dependent on your height. You have a maximum ski length that is 146% of your height. So for instance, I'm 5'10". I ski on a 260 centimeter ski, which is about 8 feet.
Do you ever try to just ski them down a hill for fun?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you still jump once in a while, right? I see random pictures once in a while.
I'll go out like once a year, just hug it.
Does it feel more unnatural now, or is it like riding a bike? You're just like, oh, I got it.
Most people will never go back and jump once they retire because it is, it's intense. Like there's no like backing out. You let go of that bar, you're locked in an ice track going 60 miles an hour and you're going off a cliff. And the safest thing to do is throw your ass over your head. But my last competitive jump, was 9th at World Championships 3 or 4 years ago. And I just locked that in. So when I go to the jump, that's the only jump I think about. I'm like, I'm just going to do that again.
Wow.
That'll be cool.
What's not safe, last topic, is snowmobiling with you. How did you go from like super endurance guy to sledding? I mean, I think the first time I caught up with you here, you were like I don't know if you just got it, but like it was all you want to talk about. And which is funny because, I mean, in 7th or 8th grade, I was a test driver for Snowgoer magazine. And then I was racing snowcross races on my old Arctic Cats. And my dad's like, what are you doing? I'm just like breaking things. But like, if you had asked me when I was that age what I wanted to do, I wanted to race snowmobiles. Like so you started talking, I'm like, oh man, we're going to have a winter here.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have a better winter this winter.
I sure hope so.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, real quickly, I did everything I ever like could dream of in skiing, cycling, running. I mean, I wouldn't say everything I could dream of, but my bars are so high, and I did so much of it. I raced because I was racing professionally on the bike, because I was doing running races, because I was, I raced 100+ days a year, every year for over a decade. And, I was at a high level. I was 10th American at the New York Marathon. I raced, Tour of Utah on the bike.
What was your time at the marathon?
2:33.
2:33.
And so
I ran the same year, and I think I was in a bar the night before, but I think
that's not an excuse.
I think it was like 3:24 or something I ran.
That's pretty good. You would have been right with tennis player, Dutch girl.
Who?
We can talk about it after. But
I should have known.
The world's #1 tennis player. She ran 3:29.
Sharapova? I don't really.
Yeah.
I know the Williams sisters. I don't know much beyond that. Well, anyway.
In any case, so I did all this stuff across all the sports that I loved.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know, when I retired, it was just like, I didn't have the time to train like I used to. I didn't really want to. And I knew I was never going to be as good as I used to be. So I needed to find something that challenged me. Because to me, it's all about the journey.
Right.
It's like literally not about the medals.
The progression.
It's about getting better and doing. And so, I used to hate snowmobiles. I thought they were like dirty and, whoever rode one was a redneck. And I ended up getting a cabin close to Park City, and I needed a snowmobile to get in and out. So I got this old clunker used snowmobile, and it sucked. And so, I was like, I still don't understand it. And then finally, somebody gave me a lesson on a powder sled on a Bluebird day, and I got it. And all of a sudden, I rolled the sled over and made a turn, and I was like, that was really cool. And then I dumped it, got stuck, and I dig it out, and then I did it again, and I was like, I mean, it's everything that you love about athletics. It's like,
and it's a workout.
It is a serious
People
workout.
don't realize what it's like. I mean, those things weigh, what do they weigh, 407 pounds or something dry. I mean, when you are in basically bottomless powder maneuvering,
you're throwing that around.
Call it 500 pounds with all the snow and gas and everything on it,
and when you do it right, though, it's like it feels effortless.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you got to get your hips up and stand on the rail the right way.
Yep.
Kind of throw your body weight, and the sled just kind of comes around effortlessly. Now you do that for 10 minutes, and it feels like you've been rock climbing.
Right.
Your arms are all pumped, but
and then if you get stuck, digging out is like
and
one of the hardest
we rode
things.
Together last year. Like, I'm not bad, but I'm not good, right? So I'm still having this love for like learning something new, and in fact, going out boating and learning how to wake surf. That's been a blast too, because I've never surfed before. I've been to the ocean. I think I've rented a board once, never got up.
Right.
Now all of a sudden I've got something new to learn. And I think that like kind of that pursuit of, whether it's knowledge or new skills is something that drives me. And obviously, when you've been as good at running, skiing, or biking as I was, I mean, I know I could get back. It'd probably be 95% as good as I was if I really wanted to, but why?
Right. Do something new.
It's
super fun. Well, I'm glad you did it because it gives me somebody to hang with.
Liam Liam recently, I started showing him wingsuit videos. It's
one
of those things that I really wanted to do, but then put the kibosh on because we started having kids. But I have to say, like, as dangerous as that is, if that's something he really wanted to get into, I could see trying to get into that with him someday.
It looks so cool, right?
So cool. I think it's like everything. I mean, I think that's what ski jumping feels like when I look at it. And a lot of my friends that used to jump are doing it. And
you'd probably be good at it. I mean, if anybody understands
spent a lot of time
aerodynamics
in the air
and
flying,
right.
Without wings.
Wow, man. We could talk forever. Anything else you want to add to this? I mean, this was fascinating.
No, this is fun.
Yeah.
We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, we will.
Pick a new topic. But no, it's like you said, for beating in a random place.
Yeah.
I don't even remember how, but we did keep in touch somehow, whether it was Facebook or email or something. And it would be like years would go by. But when you texted me last year, it was like literally 14 months ago, I think. You said, I'm moving to town.
Yeah.
And I sent you a picture of a snowmobile. And you sent back a picture of you on the cover of a snowmobile magazine back in the day, wearing bright pink.
Yeah, we got some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I knew that it was going to be fun.
Well,
so
I think the time I saw you before that was when Eric Meyer was in town for Sundance and that film, The Summit.
Yep.
And I'd picked him up at the airport. He'd flown his own plane in, and I can't remember, he'd like dropped something at your house or something, but he's like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, oh, no way. I haven't seen Billy since Baghdad, for real.
Yeah.
So but a little more frequently now, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
We'll do it again soon. You bet. All right.